Who you? None of your business, you crummy little rat.
It's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. It's time for a Blu-ray review / double movie review / big old discussion. It's the Basher box. Hell yes. So this is from Pearl River Entertainment, which is a like a sub-label, I guess, or an imprint of VCI Entertainment. And so here you have the cover art. There's a lot to talk about with this set. So I'm going to have to divide this video into sections. I'm just going to show off the kind of release here for you. So there are two films in here. There's Prodigal Boxer, and then there's The Awakened Punch. And there you can see the artwork for them. And let me pop this out. And you can see, yeah, see, so there's like reversible kind of artwork if you choose to flip that around. So I'm going to talk to you very briefly about the films, just so you have an idea of what they are. I'm going to talk to you about presentation here, because this set is very different from what we're used to getting from like 88 and Eureka. And basically the way that I would describe that succinctly is that Pearl River is trying to curate a cinematic experience / education for you. Whereas I think with 88 and Eureka, they're like, let's just give everybody everything and let them kind of figure it out. So it's a very different experience. I love this set. I'm really happy that I have it. I learned a lot from it. I really enjoy both of these movies. But I do think a lot of whether you're going to love this does come down to personal taste and how you want to approach the films and stuff like that. So to tell you about the movies, there's Prodigal Boxer was released in 1972. It has fight choreography from Lau Kar-wing, who's a brother of Lau Kar-lung, who's a very famous director and fight choreographer. He directed like Legendary Weapons of China and all kinds of stuff like that. And it stars Mang Fei. He's very, very young in this film. And I wrote down all the info here. There's two movies, like I said. So there's a lot of information. So I wrote it all down because I was like, I don't want to forget anything. It's about Fong Sayuk, who, Jet Li played, and a bunch of other, famous actors. And, like, he's a huge character throughout the history of martial arts films. It was directed by Ulysses Ao Young-jun. I'm going to talk more about that later. Yasuaki Kurata is in this film, who you'll recognize from tons of stuff like Heroes of the East and things like that. And then you have The Awakened Punch, which came out in 1973. So, and just to give you a visual, Prodigal Boxer is this one here. And Awakened Punch is this one here. And Awakened Punch has fight choreography from Yun Woo Ping. And he is in the film as one of like the extras / stunt performers. And some of his brothers are in, and maybe all of his brothers. I don't know, he had several brothers. And his brothers are kind of like in and around the film as well. The film stars Henry Yu Young. And it's directed by Fong Long Sung. And one of the things that's really interesting about this movie and of tremendous historical note is the people who do the fight scenes and play the secondary characters and the stunts and stuff like that, who include Yun Hua, Mars, Yun Biu, and somebody you may have heard of before named Jackie Chan. Kenneth Sang is also in this film, who is in A Better Tomorrow, and he's also in Replacement Killers, actually, which is like right behind me, right there on DVD, because I just reviewed that film, Chow Yun-fat, Antoine Fuqua. And Mira Sorvino is in it. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about the kind of the presentation of the films here and what I believe to be the goal of the set. The films here are scanned. They're 4K scans from prints, 35mm prints, I believe. There's a title card that comes up before each film that's really interesting that basically says what they did was they scanned the prints and they used photographs and other references from when the film was made for the color presentation and stuff like that, but otherwise left it alone because they wanted you to see the film as it would have been to see the film in theaters at the time. Now, there are probably people who don't like this approach as much. I don't know for sure. I haven't spoken to those people, but I do know that there are people who might see like the film scratches or the film grain and be like, oh, this isn't what I want. I loved it. Let me tell you why I loved it. I love going to places like the New Beverly and other movie theaters like that and seeing films on 35 millimeter prints, especially older prints, so that it feels like you're seeing it as it would have been seen in theaters, and you're there with an audience. And like this really felt like that. You go into, when you go into the New Beverly and like that, the big blue screen with like the R rating with the white stripe comes up, and it's got like the mono audio track, and like it just really feels like an experience. That's what this is like. This is not like an a la carte build your own, I want the Japanese soundtrack with the Cantonese mono with the, it's like, here's a film as you may have walked into a theater and seen it. And I just think it's really, really cool. It's an English dub, so I don't know if that's going to bother people. That did not bother me at all. I'm used to watching Shaw Brothers films on English dub, and these films are both from the 70s and have a very kind of Shaw type of feel to them, even though they are very, very different than Shaw films in certain aspects. So that's just to give you an idea of kind of like what the presentation of the film is. Now, to me, the goal of this set is to basically educate the viewer on the brawler, basher, whatever you want to call it, subgenre. I knew nothing about this subgenre before coming into this set, other than that kind of like that it existed and that these films were out there, and like, I don't know, there's Sonny Chiba and Bruce Lee and stuff like that. But I learned so much from this set. There's a 14-minute, like a little mini documentary with interviews from Michael Wirth, who is a martial arts actor and director. He's been in a bunch of like U.S. martial arts films and has directed stuff too. And he knows a ton and is like very, very interesting to listen to, and like is able to really contextualize stuff and kind of help present the films to you. And then John Craig, who I think is awesome, that you'll know. He's on the Master Blu-ray from 88 Films. He was in that film with Jet Li, and there are 2 interviews with him on that 88 release that are just incredible. And I've actually started corresponding with him a bit on Instagram. He's a really nice person, and he has literally written a textbook on fight choreography and like non-verbal storytelling and communication in films. So it is invaluable to have the 2 of these people, this filmmaker and this fight choreographer, stunt choreographer, martial artist, who again has literally written the textbook on these things, talking about these films and what differentiates them from like the Shapes style of fighting, for instance, and how they were different from films that came before them, and how, like with Prodigal Boxer, for instance, there was a sequel that was very much a Shapes type of film. And so like that movie came out and kind of caught in between these worlds of different styles of fighting and stuff like that. But the brawler / basher genre was really defined by chaotic, violent, aggressive, like real world looking, almost like mixed martial arts style fighting that existed to articulate raw emotions like anger and hatred and revenge and stuff like that. And there are 2 great essays in here too that really help contextualize that. One is from John Craig, and it's a history of the Yun clan. So it's Yun Wu Ping's dad, I did not know this, taught Jackie Chan's teacher. He was a Peking opera guy, and he got involved in films. And all of his sons got involved in films because of that. It's a whole like mini history. All the yellow text here is that of their family and their work in Hong Kong, and it's so cool. And then the blue text is by Michael Wirth, and that continues on to the back here, and that's an essay about kind of overview of these films and stuff like that, and how he first came into contact with them and what his relationship with them is. So now to talk about the films themselves, there's a Michael Wirth, and I really hope his name is Michael and not Matt, because I don't feel like a total chode. Yeah, Michael Wirth. And Matthew Whitaker. So Matthew Whitaker is the Cinema Bushido podcast. The 2 of them do an audio commentary on The Prodigal Boxer. And what I do have to say is these films are very different. And that's one of the things that's so interesting about it, because you get the context of understanding why they're in a set together because of the fight style and where they stand historically in the evolution of Hong Kong cinema and martial arts films. But then you also get to see that they are radically different films, and that's really, really interesting. So the Prodigal Boxer has an audio commentary on it, like I said, from Michael Wirth and Matthew Whitaker. And so what I'll do is I'll talk about The Awakened Punch first, even though it's the later film, because I'm going to talk more about Prodigal Boxer. Awakened Punch is a really interesting movie, especially because I watched it second, and it's so different. It's a really scuzzy, nasty movie. Like, if you don't like exploitation films, and if you don't like Grindhouse films and like the type of stuff that Tarantino just like loves, you might not like this movie. It's like, there's a whole kind of like bordello kind of setting where like a lot of scenes take place where there's just like gratuitous nudity and sex, and like the bad guys are really really bad. Like they burn people alive, they murder old women. There are multiple attempts to like rape different characters in this film. You don't actually see any raping on screen, and there is no successful raping of anyone. So that's something that's like a make or break thing for you, because I really don't like watching movies with rape scenes in them. They didn't go there in this film. It almost went there a couple times. They didn't go there. I was very happy they didn't go there. And these bad guys are bad people, but the whole point of the film is that it's kind of this really dark drama about there's this guy who goes around, he moves away from home to the big city basically, and he goes around just beating the absolute turd out of people, and he gets paid for it. So like there are these vendors who have these shops on this street, and they're being extorted by these criminals, and they pay this guy, and he just whoops the ever-loving shit out of them. And so his dad is dying, and he goes home, and his dad makes him promise he's not going to resort to violence anymore, and he'll stop fighting, and he'll stay out of trouble, and he'll, work on the family farm and take care of his sister and try to raise a family. So he agrees to that. He promises his dying father. And then these very bad people show up, and they're like, we need your land, buy, because there's going to be a highway coming through, so they know the land is worth a lot of money, so they want to buy it for cheap so that they can then sell it to the people making the highway and stuff like that, right? It's actually kind of similar to Nowhere to Run, the Van Damme movie. But there's a lot of movies like this, right? The guy is like, I'm not going to sell you the land, but they start threatening violence, and he's like, I promise my dad I'm not going to do anything violent. And basically, like, an hour or even like an hour and 10 minutes or so of this movie, probably about an hour, is the bad guys doing horrible shit so that you get to the point where the good guy's like, okay, Dad, I'm sorry, I'm gonna fuck these guys up. And then he just goes fucking ham, and it's just like ballistic, insane revenge. So and the fighting is just like, it's Yuen Wu Ping. It's just like chaotic, violent madness. But this is like a trashy, and I say trashy in a good way, but this is like a trashy exploitation movie. Then you have Prodigal Boxer, which is much more traditional, kind of like Shaw Brothers style film. Again, it's not Shaw Brothers, but like it has that Shaw Brothers kind of feeling to it, with like everyone's got the ponytails and the costumes, and there's a lot of stuff that takes place on sets, and it's like really obviously sets, which I really liked. Like you can see like creases in the sky where like they painted it, but there was like a gap in the boards, and they're like, yeah, it's not worth using like wallpapering it over, just leave the gap there and like stuff. But I love that, especially this is like I said, 4K scan. I watched this on a 59-inch TV. It looks good as hell. Now, that being said, I talked about this with Fearless Hyena too. Like they made these movies fast as hell, and they made them for cheap. And you can see out of focus shots and stuff where the footage is not as good, and like the colors are not nailed down in certain scenes, and like it's kind of washed out. And it's pretty interesting to watch it like that. But where it looks good as hell. And you can see really cool details in this film. But so this is a story of an arrogant young man who basically makes a mistake, gets on the bad side of some bad people. They hurt his family, and he wants revenge, right? So it's basically like, Clan of the White Lotus or Executioners from Shaolin, and then there's like this, you have to train and get revenge, and you've been beaten up really badly. But then you have that classic Jackie Chan thing, right? You see the Young Master, you see Dragon Lord. There's an arrogant young man. He goes out and does stupid shit. He gets in trouble, and they really beat him down, and he's got to go and learn to be more mature and learn how to harness his power and perfect his martial arts. And his mom is a martial artist. That's really cool too. There's a really strong female figure in this film who's like his role model, and there's a woman who he falls in love with, who helps kind of like nurse him through his injuries after he gets beaten up by Yasuaki Kurata. Plays like the main two of like the bad guys and stuff like that. And it's a morally ambiguous film, because he does something kind of bad in the beginning of the movie in his youthful arrogance, and that's why these guys are after him. So their desire for revenge is justified, as much as his desire to get revenge upon them for what they have done to him is justified. So it's this kind of interesting thing where he is the Fong Sayuk character, right? So, but they make him imperfect, and young and arrogant. That's really interesting. But we've seen this plot like a million times. But so Michael Worth and Matthew Whitaker do this really great audio commentary where they walk you through what makes this film exceptional, beyond the fact that it's a Basher film and it's pre kind of shapes, or like as the transition to shapes is happening, and you see this really interesting moment caught in time. of like the shapes are coming and you know the different styles and stuff like that, but you have this brawler, basher, violent, brutal style. Beyond that, Michael Wirth, especially being a filmmaker and someone who's been in a bunch of movies as an actor and performer, you know, he does this really tremendous analysis of this film, talking about the director and how the directors, you know, in a lot of those films, those old school martial arts films, you have flat spaces and characters stacked within flat spaces and like direct, obvious coverage kind of shots of like, here's the establishing shot and then here's this person and here's this person, and the fight choreography is not necessarily done to cut together in certain ways. And he breaks down how this movie is so fascinating. Like the director is focusing on using depth instead of side to side space, and how he arranges characters in space and shots at angles to create depth and stuff like that, and like interesting dolly moves that come this way through space rather than side to side through space, again to create that sense of depth, and like non-traditional coverage where it's not just like full-on frontal face shot of people talking, but like angled shots as they approach one another to get angles of approach. And then also really interesting stuff about the editing in the fight scenes too, like, you know, there's a segment where two fight scenes are cut together, and Michael Wirth breaks down like, okay, now watching this fight scene, this guy's gonna punch this guy in the face. We cut to the other fight scene right as someone receives a punch in the face. So it was very deliberately shot to cut together, and it's a very meticulously crafted film. So in addition to getting all this information about the basher genre, brawler genre, whatever you want to call it, and what makes these films unique and where they exist in history, you get this really fascinating, you know, commentary track of a filmmaker basically watching a film and breaking it down and talking about nailing the craft and talking about, you know, angles, depth, lenses. He talks about anamorphic lenses and how the anamorphic format came into Hong Kong through Japan. And then he talks a lot about the influence of Japanese cinema on Hong Kong cinema while he's talking about like, look at the framing here. It's a great commentary track. So as you can tell by my effusive talking about this film, I loved this set. The films themselves were super fun. Now you should know that there are some people who are not as keen on these movies as I am. Like you may have seen on Instagram or YouTube people reviewing them and they're not as effusive as I am. One of the reasons for that is that I'll say straight up that when I watch old school kung fu movies, it's comfort food for me. Like, I'm not going to pick apart these movies and analyze them and say, well, they didn't do this as well as they did in this other movie. And like, I just love these films, and they're so, it's like coming home. You know, I put them on, I sit down, my mind turns off, I'm comfortable, I love it, and I just enjoy it. And so if you're someone who's like hypercritical and you're going to be like, whoa, you know, I didn't like the fact that blah, blah, or like the narrative is not sophisticated in these films, right? So if you're going to be anal about that, you're probably not going to like these movies. But it is what it is. I really, really enjoyed both of the films. I think this is a tremendous set. I think they did a really great job of making deliberate decisions and being like, we're going to present this in a certain way with these English dubs, with like the way it would have looked back then, with all this historical context about this subgenre, so you can understand what it would have been like having come through Shaw Brothers and stuff like that into the era of Bruce Lee and then the uncertainty after Bruce Lee's death, to be right in the middle of all of this and to have seen these films in theaters and understanding the evolution of the fighting and how startling that would have been, how violent these films were and things like that. So my name is Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. 2 thumbs up for me. I know I don't give movies ratings or things like that, but like I said, I really, really, really did enjoy visiting this set and learning all this stuff. And I thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about this set. We'll see you next time.